8 people have died at Disneyland. Not from heart attacks or random accidents, but from technical failures that Disney knew about but chose to ignore. Imagine a perfect day at the happiest place on Earth. Families laughing, children excited, and then everything collapses. In the next 17 minutes, you'll know exactly who's responsible, why they got away with it, and why this pattern continues to this day. This isn't just a story about death. This is an investigation into accountability. The story begins on a summer afternoon in 1974. An 18-year-old employee named Deborah Stone was about to start the last shift of her life. This isn't a story about a single tragedy. This is a story about a pattern: 8 deaths, dozens injured, and systemic failures that someone chose to overlook. Each of these 8 victims believed they were safe. Their families trusted Disney would protect them. They were wrong. Stay with me. Because the truth Disney has tried to hide for nearly 50 years, it's darker than you think. Deborah Stone, 18 years old. College student. Part-time at Disneyland. July 8, 1974, she started her afternoon shift at America Sings, a theater show with 6 auditoriums rotating around a central stage. This was Deborah's 47th shift. Simple job: stand between auditoriums to guide the audience. A normal workday, or at least it should have been. America Sings was a rotating theater. 6 auditoriums, 150 seats each, slowly rotating around the stage to watch 6 different performances. Between each auditorium was an 18-inch gap, less than half a meter, so the auditoriums could rotate freely. Here's what Disney knew. When the auditoriums rotated, that gap became a death trap. If someone stood in the wrong position, they would be crushed between 2 moving walls, 900 kilograms per wall. No emergency stop mechanism. No safety sensors. Management had been warned. Multiple times. Other employees had reported that the gap was dangerous. Requested installation of a warning system, but Disney said, "Too expensive, not necessary." That afternoon, Deborah stood at her usual position, but she stepped back just 1 step and stepped into the dead zone. At 9 p.m., when the auditorium began to rotate, Deborah was trapped between 2 walls. Her chest and stomach were crushed. But here's the worst part. She remained conscious for the next 10 minutes. The audience inside didn't know anything. The music kept playing. The show continued. Only Deborah's colleague, standing in the adjacent auditorium, heard screams and realized something was wrong. When they stopped the system, it was too late. Deborah Stone died at the scene. 18 years old, 47th shift. The subsequent investigation concluded Deborah's death was completely preventable. Disney had violated multiple safety regulations, but no one was charged criminally. Deborah's family received an undisclosed settlement. America Sings reopened 3 days later, with new warning lights installed at the gap warning lights. The solution they had refused to implement before. The solution that could have saved Deborah Stone's life. But this wasn't the only time Disney ignored safety warnings. 29 years later, this pattern repeated. And this time, it happened in front of 200 people. Deborah Stone, Marcelo Torres, Dolly Young, Brandon Zucker, Christy Lee Parker, Gerardo Gonzalez, Mark Maples, Bogdan Delaro. 8 names, 8 deaths, from 1974 to 2016. But these aren't 8 separate accidents. This is a pattern, and this pattern has a name: corporate negligence with zero accountability. We did something no one in the industry does. Compare Disneyland with other theme parks around the world. The result? Shocking. Tokyo Disneyland. 42 years of operation, 100 million visitors annually. Deaths? 0. Not because they're lucky, but because they comply with Japan's strict safety standards, standards that mandate daily safety inspections with no exceptions. Disneyland Anaheim. 69 years of operation, 18 million visitors annually. Deaths? 8. Why? Because California allows parks to self-inspect for safety. No independent agency, no strict oversight. But here's the scariest part. 6 of these 8 deaths occurred after clear warnings about technical issues. Big Thunder Mountain, reports about wheel problems 2 years before Marcelo Torres died Matterhorn, complaints about the brake system 6 months before Dolly Young's fatal accident. The pattern is clear. Warnings ignored, accidents happen, silent settlements, operations continue, and this cycle continues. For one simple reason, California doesn't require Disney to publicly report accidents. This is the loophole Disney has exploited for nearly 50 years. Meanwhile, in Tokyo, every accident, even the smallest, must be immediately reported to regulatory authorities. Everything is transparent. And the result? 0 deaths. So why doesn't Disney change? The answer: economics. Every time they close an attraction for thorough inspection, they lose about $100,000 per day. But each settlement? Average $2 to $5 million one-time payment. Not public. No impact on brand. From a business perspective, it's a reasonable trade-off. But from an ethical perspective, it's a crime. And this is why this pattern continues until California changes the law, until the public demands transparency. The pattern will never stop, but the number 8 is only those who died. What about the survivors? They carry permanent scars, and their stories are even darker. 8 people dead, but over 50 injured. And these survivors carry a question that never gets answered. Why me? Brandon Zucker, 10 years old when Big Thunder Mountain derailed. He and his brother Matt were sitting in Car 2. Car 1, where Marcelo Torres sat, flew off the tracks and crashed into a tunnel. Brandon survived. But he witnessed Torres's death. And 20 years later in an interview, he said, "Every time I hear brakes squeal, I see that scene again. Disney took away a part of my childhood." That's the real cost of negligence, not just numbers. Lives, memories, wounds that never heal. Now, let's dive deep into these cases, because the details will make you understand why this pattern cannot continue. Case number 2, Big Thunder Mountain. September 5th, 2003. Marcelo Torres sitting in Car 1. 10 minutes later, he was no longer alive. Here's why. September 5th, 2003, Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. One of the most popular attractions at Disneyland. Marcelo Torres, 22, from California, was sitting in Car 1 with his fiancée. This is the most thoroughly investigated case in Disneyland history. And the investigation results will make you understand why Disney doesn't want to talk about it. Big Thunder Mountain is a family roller coaster. Maximum speed 36 miles per hour. No loops, designed safe for children. But there was one weak point: the coupling system between cars. Each car was connected by a metal wheel called a connecting rod assembly. This wheel bore all the pulling force when the train moved. It needed regular inspection and maintenance by regulation, every 6 months. Here's what OSHA, the U.S. Occupational Safety Administration, discovered. The wheel on Car 1 of Big Thunder Mountain hadn't been inspected in 2 years. 2 years, despite reports from maintenance staff that the wheel showed abnormal wear. Why? Because inspection meant closing the attraction. Closing meant losing money. According to OSHA's calculations, Disney had saved about $200,000 by delaying maintenance. And the price? That afternoon, at 2:15 p.m., as the train was climbing a slope, the coupling wheel broke. Car 1 separated from the train, raced uncontrolled down the slope, and crashed into a tunnel. Marcelo Torres died instantly from traumatic brain injury. 10 other passengers were injured, 4 of them seriously. OSHA's investigation concluded Torres's death was a direct consequence of Disneyland's failure to comply with mandatory maintenance schedules. Disney was fined $25,000, the maximum penalty under California law at the time. $25,000 for a death. That was the entire legal consequence. After the accident, Big Thunder Mountain closed for 15 months to completely rebuild the coupling system. Disney spent $15 million on this. They also implemented a new inspection system, with daily inspections instead of every 6 months. But here's what they didn't do: apologize publicly, admit negligence. or commit that this pattern wouldn't repeat at other attractions. Instead, they settled the lawsuit with Torres's family out of court. $25 million with a non-disclosure agreement. The family couldn't talk about the settlement terms, couldn't publicly criticize Disney. Brandon Zucker, the 10-year-old boy who survived that accident, still has nightmares about Torres's death. 20 years later, he still can't go to theme parks. Big Thunder Mountain reopened in December 2004. Lines still long, families still laughing, and the pattern still continuing. Big Thunder Mountain wasn't the only one. Matterhorn, Sailing Ship Columbia, Space Mountain. Each case has the same pattern. And now, we need to answer the biggest question: who's responsible? We've reviewed all the evidence. 8 deaths, dozens of ignored reports, 0 criminal charges, and a pattern spanning 50 years. The question isn't what happened. We know that. The question is, who's responsible? And the answer isn't simple. There are 3 perspectives on responsibility in these cases. Perspective A, Disney, the corporation. 8 deaths in 50 years. 900 million visitors in that same period. Probability of dying at Disneyland, 0.0000009%. Much lower than the probability of dying in a traffic accident every day. From a statistical standpoint, Disneyland is safer than the streets. But here's the problem. These numbers ignore one important detail. 6 of the 8 deaths occurred after specific warnings that Disney knew about and ignored. That's not an accident. That's negligence. Perspective B, California, the regulator. California allows theme parks to self-inspect for safety. No independent agency. No mandatory reporting. This is the biggest loophole in the system. Tokyo Disneyland, with 0 deaths, has the opposite regulation. Mandatory independent daily inspections. If California changed the law, requiring independent inspections and public reporting, this pattern could stop immediately. Perspective C, us, the public. Every year, 18 million people still visit Disneyland, despite knowing about these cases. We buy tickets, we bring our children there, and we don't demand transparency. If the public demanded Disney disclose every accident, every safety report, every maintenance issue, they would have to. Because public pressure is stronger than any law. So who's responsible? Disney for ignoring warnings, California for regulatory loopholes, or us for not demanding transparency? Perhaps all 3. Perhaps none. Perhaps it's a systemic failure, a system designed to protect corporations instead of people. But the final decision is yours. And I want to know what you think. Before you decide, there's one last thing you need to know. From 2016 to now, there have been changes. But are they enough? That's the question I want to end with. After 2016, after the Dolly Young incident at Matterhorn, California changed some regulations. Not many, but there were changes. What changed? Theme parks now must report serious accidents within 24 hours. No more complete non-disclosure. Periodic inspections have increased, but still no mandatory independent inspections like Tokyo. What hasn't changed? Disney still gets to self-inspect, still no independent agency to verify. And the pattern? From 2016 to now, 0 deaths at Disneyland, California. That's progress. But will it last? Now, I want to know your answer to this question. Who's responsible for these 8 deaths? A. Disney, for negligence and profit over safety. B. California, for regulatory loopholes allowing self-inspection. C. Us, for not demanding transparency and accountability. Systemic failure, all 3 share responsibility. Drop your answer in the comments, A, B, C, or D, and explain why. I'll read the top 3 comments with the deepest insights. Before you go, remember, Deborah Stone, Marcelo Torres, Dolly Young, Brandon Zucker, Christy Lee Parker, Gerardo Gonzalez, Mark Maples, Bogdan Delaroe. 8 names, 8 stories, 8 lives worth remembering. If this video opened your eyes to a truth you didn't know, subscribe to see more investigations like this.